you cannot be asking someone who goes to an English speaking institution in an English speaking country in a colonized nation to prove that they speak English. That is a conversation for another video, but Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gloria and I am back with another university, school, varsity related, college related video. This time I am talking, as I promised, about applying for schools and scholarships and just applying for college or graduate school in the United States as an international student or as an African student. So I'm from Zimbabwe, but I study in South Africa. That is where I did my first couple of degrees. So my Bachelor of Social Science in International Relations and French, my LLB degree in law, so my bachelor's law degree, as well as my master's in law in comparative law in Africa, which I completed last year and graduated from last year. So I'm currently doing my PhD at the University of Cape Town, but decided to apply to some schools in the US because I knew that I wanted to study in the US. I knew that I possibly wanted to do my PhD in the US. So I decided to apply to some Ivy League schools in the US, and this was a big decision for me. It was a scary decision for me. I wasn't sure whether I should do it or not, but in the end I'm glad that I did. So I want to talk about how to apply to for graduate school or graduate programs in the United States as a foreign student, and that whole process, and just give you guys some tips, some information. I have done this process over about 2 years, and it was an interesting process. So just as a spoiler alert, I got into Stanford. So I actually applied to Stanford last year and I was accepted. I applied to Cornell and was accepted. And to a couple of other schools. Those were not successful, but I have to say, before I even started, when I started this process, I didn't even think it was even possible for me to even get in. Like, it was like it seemed like a pipe dream, but I managed to do it. And so I really encourage you guys to do it. That's the first tip I'll start with. If you are thinking of applying for a school, applying for a job, applying for anything, but particularly for schools in the United States, Ivy League schools particularly, and you're thinking about it, I think if you're thinking about it, do it, because it means that you probably have the potential, you think you probably have the potential, and you probably could get in, and it's really worth a shot. You don't want to regret it. I'm so glad that I stuck to my guns. It's a long process, it's a hard process, but it's worth it. So let's get into the video so I can just start talking about what I did, how I found the schools that I found, how I paid for the application fees, as well as other fees that are unforeseen that you might have to fork out. Yeah, so I hope you guys find this video helpful. If you do, let me know, comment down below. Before we start, subscribe. Okay, there is a red button somewhere here or here, I think it's here. But before we start, please do subscribe so I can keep churning out these videos for you. Hit the link, the bell, so that you know when I upload new videos. I also upload hair content, so if you're into natural hair stuff, then hit that button and you'll be notified as soon as those videos come up. But In the meantime, let's get into these tips for graduate school applications in the United States. The first tip, I would say, I just have my little handy dandy notebook here so I don't forget anything. But the first thing I would say is research, right? So look at the different schools that you're trying to apply to. What is your field of interest? What's important for you? Like, what are the deal breakers? So I looked at stuff like the weather. I looked at funding and how expensive the university is, how expensive the country is to stay in, the duration of the program, immigration requirements during my study as well as after my study. Do I have to write tests in order to get into the program or not? Where do I need to, how does that process, happen? That my academic goals, my professional goals and my career goals and how all of that fits in, culture of the school as well, and the culture of the city that I would be going in, and what that's like and whether I would see myself fitting in that academic space. Stuff like how are race relations on that campus, how are minorities treated, etc. All of that stuff was very important in me choosing exactly which program I was applying to and which school I was applying to. I looked at the support systems because it's a research degree that I'm getting into, and for you as well, it will be a graduate program. So you want to look at what kind of research support do they provide, especially in terms of funding, especially in terms of academic support. If you know people who have been to these schools or who are at these schools, then that's also a good resource to look into. So the second tip, what I mentioned earlier, which is apply anyway, right? If you're scared, it doesn't matter. Like, you're going to do all of this research and then you're going to be sitting down and be like, I can't do this. Do it anyway. It's really scary. It's really time consuming. It's really hard. And it takes a lot out of you actually doing applications, especially if you're applying to more than one school. I would say apply anyway. The third tip, think about the hidden costs. You need to get copies of your transcripts. You need to send them. How much is that going to cost? Do you pay to get a transcript from your institution that you're at now or that you were at? How much is it going to cost to ship it to wherever you need to ship it to? Sending them, subscribing to verification services. So a lot of the US schools will want to put your transcript through a verification system or a verification service. In my case, I had to put my transcript through a verification system, and I had to pay, that service. I had to pay for that service. I had to pay for the reports that go out to the various schools that I was applying to. You might have to have your transcript translated. How much is that going to cost? All of those are like hidden costs that you may not think of before you start the process, and then once you start it, you're just forking out money. So that's just something that I would say think about as well. Do those calculations if you're someone who is working with a tight budget and has to, kind of figure out how you're going to pay for all of this, because you have to pay for the application process. And in my experience, the application process is itself a vetting system. I think already they are sifting through students, and so you do have to make sure you kind of have the stamina for it. So these are just the things that you're going to have to look out for when applying for graduate programs in the US. Next tip is be organized, right? Split your applications if you're doing multiple applications. Make sure you know the deadlines. Make sure that you are well ahead of the deadlines. Of course, this is difficult because you're doing life as you're applying, right? So when I was applying my first application process, I applied while I was doing my LLM, and I was trying to submit my master's and my master's dissertation. So I had exams as well, so I was doing that, and I was involved in like university things, and I was working as a TA, so I was marking as well, and it was just a mess. It was really, really difficult. So and I missed some key things and missed some key opportunities, funding opportunities, because I applied very, very late. Partly because I was afraid, I didn't think that I would get in the first place, especially into an Ivy League school. My grades were average, so I was just like, I'm probably not going to get in. So I waited until the very last second to start the application process, and that self-doubt, I paid the price for it, but I'll get into that later, maybe in another video. For the purposes of this video, the main point is be organized, know your deadlines, know exactly what's required by when, and try to be ahead of that deadline. Split your tasks into manageable chunks, right? So if you have to get recommendations, decide to do, okay, today I'm doing only recommendations. If you are doing the personal info part of your bio, no, okay, today I'm just doing the personal info of the bio. I'm not going to do the whole application. And then if you're doing the personal statement, today I'm working on my personal statements. Today I'm working on my proposal. If you have to submit a proposal, just make sure that it's all, you don't sit down and decide to do the whole application in one day. Rather, know the deadline in advance, and then organize your time and organize the tasks such that you're doing a little bit at a time, but you're getting it all done within the time frame that you have to. Take note of all the requirements. Read through the requirements, read through the website, read through, go on other websites possibly. Just try and look around on the internet, skim everything that you think you might need for the application process, and make sure that you obviously are eligible to apply, and that once you do apply, that you read through all the requirements. There was one application where I hadn't read the requirement exactly, even though the rule was stupid in the first place. But in any case, I applied, I paid the money, only to find out that there was a key requirement that I had misread, and so that was a waste of money essentially, and a waste of an application. In terms of the personal statement, I applied to LLM programs, right? So I can only speak in that regard, but I think that in general, this advice applies across the board when applying to the US. What I would say is they tend to want you to be honest, be authentic. They are interested in your story and in your journey. Oftentimes they want to know why your journey so far makes you suited to the program, and what you intend to do with the program in terms of your journey, or to fulfill your dreams, and why you think you fit in their class, why you think you're the right person to have in their class. So talk about your story, be honest, say something interesting, but at the same time, don't feel the need to, don't feel the need to have this amazing story. It's unlikely that you have nothing to say, particularly if you're not from the US, and if you are from Africa, Asia, or countries that are so-called developing, then you probably have an interesting perspective on life, an interesting perspective on things. And so, try to bring that out in your application and in your personal statement, and try to really be honest about what your dreams are and what your plans are, right? The applications, at least the ones that I've done so far, had the effect of kind of making me reflect on why it is I wanted to go to these schools in the first place. And so it was good because it really made me not be superficial, and it kind of tested me, because it was like, okay, do you just want to go to Stanford because it's Stanford, or do you want to go there because you actually think that there's a place for you there, that the ethos of the school, the values that they hold, the resources that they have will be beneficial to you and to the rest of the world, and that your kind of vision aligns with theirs. And so that's the kind of thing that they want to see in your personal statement, and you should try and bring that out. Of course, again, be organized with your statement. Don't write it the day of the submission. Have someone read over it. Make sure that there are no typos. Make sure that it's authentic and it reads well and it sounds good. Recommendations, right? Again, I go back to the be organized thing, right? Because it all comes back to being organized. A lot of this stuff you can't get through if you don't start well in advance. So recommendations are difficult because you have to find someone who knows you well. You have to find someone who is going to be generous with their recommendation and with the things that they say about you, someone who obviously places you in high regard and is impressed by the work that you have done with them, or someone you've worked with in general. They do specify that you shouldn't have family members or friends recommend you, right? You want to have either an employer or if it's an academic recommendation that's required, which is most of the time, then it's someone who has direct contact with you in an academic space, and so they've read your work and they can recommend you in that regard. Ask early, because recommenders take a while. Oftentimes recommenders are professors and they have a whole bunch of people asking them for recommendations, and you don't want to ask them at the last minute, right? Because you don't want them to rush through it. At the same time, you don't want to be pushing them, because they're doing you a favor, you know what I mean? And so you want to make sure that you ask early. You tell people that, listen, I'm trying to apply to these schools, and make it clear exactly what the school wants, right? And then again, remind them constantly. You have to, I know it's super awkward to listen, I need this recommendation, and you're kind of taking a while with it, but listen, it is what it is. You need the recommendation. I remember for one of my applications, I had to ask for the recommendation a few hours before the deadline was closing, and I literally had to be on the case of my recommender. But and I felt so awkward about it, because it's oh my god, I don't want to put pressure on you, but listen, I need this thing. So do that. If you have to do that, then do that, because ultimately you need to get this application through, and you want to have everything that you need. In my experience, when I was doing my LLM LLM applications, there was you could submit the application and then the recommendations would follow, because in any case they had to go through that verification system that I was talking about called LSAC, and so they could kind of follow a day or two later, or even a week later. They gave you a deadline, so it wasn't as tight, but I preferred to have everything in within the time. So I was on the case of my recommenders, constantly reminding them. With CV, don't be shy, flourish, right? Say everything that you think is necessary. I put everything that I had done in my CV to show that I had experience doing other things outside of just the school environment, and so my CV reflected that. So try to tailor your CV, go over it again, make sure there are no typos, make sure you've included whatever you think is important information that will be a good support for your application. It should be organized but reflect a breadth of experience. It should demonstrate how your experience should be valuable to the classroom and to the program. I kind of whizzed through that, but I hope that helps someone who is applying. I have committed to Stanford and I'm super excited, but again, I understand the anxiety and the absolute just daunting nature of starting an application, particularly starting an application for graduate programs in the US. You have to do the GRE test, you have to do possibly other tests, you have to pay so much money. The application process can be quite exclusionary in my opinion, especially as regards the requirement for an English proficiency exam for countries, most of which have been colonized by the British. You cannot be asking someone who goes to an English speaking institution in an English-speaking country, in a colonized nation, to prove that they speak English. That is a conversation for another video, but you know what I mean? But just for your notes, just for an NB, a side note, you know, I definitely was looking at a lot of these schools with the side eye, like, and then claim to be you know, space for diversity. So that was something that I was looking at as well, because as much as you want to get into these schools, you want a school that shows that they want you. And so keep that in mind as well. You are valuable, you are smart enough, you are good enough, you can get into an Ivy League school as a foreign student from a developing country. You can do it. Believe me, you can do it. So just commit to it, start early, believe in yourself. Yeah, so that's me, that's my spiel, you guys. I hope that's helpful for people. And if you have any more questions or any other things to do with the US graduate school application, leave it down below. I will be following up this video with another video that is Stanford specific, and that is to do with the Knight Hennessy scholarship, which I am proudly a recipient of. So I will be doing a video on how I did that whole application and what that process was like, and yeah, I'm really excited to be going to Stanford. It's still crazy to me. It's crazy to me. I can't believe it, but I can't wait. And it's just testament to the fact that if you work hard, if you put in the grind, put in the commitment, and just believe in yourself. Oh my God, I don't know how many times I can say this because it's important. The imposter syndrome is real, and I completely get it, right? I completely relate. 100%. Not a summa cum laude student, but I got into Stanford, and so can you. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe. Come back for another video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.